Last week on the Personal Growth Podcast, we discussed motherhood, addiction, beauty school, and using Facebook and other forms of social media for external validation. This week, the boys are in the studio with John Gann, father of two, owner, founder, operator of Elevate Idaho. He's a real outdoorsman. Let's get cracking on the Personal Growth Podcast.
Thank you, Eric. For our listeners, eventually we're going to transition from the Personal Growth Podcast as the title to PGP. And
all right, I told the announcer that. He must have not read his notes.
Yeah.
What a jerk.
Maybe the announcer didn't take notes. Like that's fine.
I gave him notes.
I think his accent changed, too, from the episode to episode, if I recall.
Well, there was one episode where we had to bring in a temporary replacement announcer just because the other one wasn't really feeling up to it.
The British guy?
Yeah.
Is it the British guy? Yeah.
That one threw me off for sure. Okay, so John.
Yes.
So stoked to have you in the studio today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
We've been able to talk quite a bit over the last couple of weeks and get to know each other a little bit better. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of just shortly describe what Elevate Idaho is, and then I'm going to ask a question right afterwards.
Okay. So Elevate Idaho is a clothing company that I founded in 2018. Our primary purpose is to give back to the state of Idaho through conservation. Primarily, we do that through 20% of our revenue to the ICL, which is Idaho Conservation League. But it's also about connecting with our inner selves through nature, which is what the mountains have done for me.
Right. So there's a really good quote that I heard. I've read from you, and you've told me in person, but do you know the one that's about being at the right elevation? So, tell our listeners what that is.
Well, this is my direct quote, and this is what I believe, and based on the conversations you and I have had about other things in life. Mm-hmm. So there really is that perfect place out there that we all want, we all deserve, and we're worth it. We just have to be at the right elevation to see it. And
that came to you in a moment of like connecting with yourself and the earth, right?
Yeah.
Was that one of your first trips out, like when you first started Elevate, or was that a while before that?
No, it was a while before that. So I'm a Missouri guy originally. I spent, my entire life outdoors. I grew up on a stop sign on a blacktop kind of deal, or gravel road 7 miles from the nearest town. Yeah, right? We talked about that.
Yeah.
So I spent time, in the outdoors there, family vacations to Colorado and the Rocky Mountains and stuff like that. And then here in Idaho, when I moved here, I've been here 17 years. My first, 9 years of that was, plugging away in kitchens, right? I was a chef. So with all that, I did all the chef things, which I cooked, I drank, I partied. So outdoors was not anything that I did, a whole lot of. And I slowly got back into it. The main thing that, led me to finding this piece of it is, in 2011, I got sober. I drank and used drugs since I was 11. Long time. I mean, 2/3 of my life, right? I spent, doing that. And, so at 30, who am I? I have no clue, right? And it still took me a lot of years to figure that out. And then in 2018, I went in for shoulder surgery, basic deal. Ended up, which was supposed to be 45 minutes, turned out to be 2 hours plus. I wake up in the recovery room crying. I'm a pretty quick guy. I've never, struggled. I used to come cold turkey off of everything back in the day. Give me my 3 days. I would work through it even, and then I was ready to go again. And I just couldn't come back from this surgery. And it was the weirdest thing. And so, going into something like that, it seems pretty routine. A lot of things can go wrong, which I wasn't aware of at the time. And eventually I discovered that I was being affected from cognitive dysfunction. Mm-hmm. from the anesthesia process, which anybody that wants to know more about it can Google it. It's very prevalent in people that are 60 plus, open heart surgery, stuff like that, but it can affect literally anybody. What I thought was like a post-operative depression after the surgery turned out to be cognitive dysfunction or decline, which basically the best way I can describe it is like if my thought process to come to resolution is like being on a Ferris wheel, eventually at some point I would get off at the bottom and I would have my resolution to whatever that thought process or problem or life issue is or whatever I'm working through. Mm-hmm. I could never get off. I could just never move beyond. Like I thought I was going to go back to work, shortly thereafter the surgery. I sat down to type an email. I just couldn't get it to work, man. And
like your fingers weren't doing what you were telling them to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating, and so it took me a while to figure out what that was. I finally met with the right doctor. The other weird thing is, when things don't go right with surgeries or anything to do with medical, mm-hmm. nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah. I mean, they don't want to. There's liabilities, right? So it's like they paralyzed my diaphragm. I couldn't breathe when I came out. Shoulder surgery, anybody that knows anything about that, you get a recliner because you're supposed to sit upright to sleep. I would fall asleep and stop breathing. Mm. So I went to the ER, and then the guy was very casually like, oh, yeah, they paralyzed your diaphragm. Like it was just some everyday occurrence. And I was like,
just another Tuesday.
Yeah. Just a common.
You're the third paralyzed diaphragm today, so you'll be just hang out. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And so then, as I started to do more of my own research and everything, it was absolute hell. I mean, I thought I had post-operative depression. I finally found the right doctor. We went through all the motions, and through therapy too, discovered that that's what it was. So at 6 weeks, I started trail running again in a sling. Every opportunity, I met a fantastic woman at the time that I was dating. She was very understanding and supportive of, what I was going through. And it was the mountains and the trails, and also being like, again, to the substance abuse, I was undiagnosed ADHD for 35 years, right? Right. So all of my experiences were different as a child growing up, right? And back then, in the 80s, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now.
They just thought you were rambunctious or you couldn't pay attention.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, I did really well in school, and all these different things. But, like I say, I've never been grounded, right? I guess is my point. And
like, what do you mean when you say grounded?
Well, so like I have a tendency to float, right? Like
mentally.
Yeah, mentally. Okay. Like I'm not present, Right. It's a huge struggle for me. Like to read, I can't read. I mean, I can. I'm not, but I mean to like actually sit down and read a book or do computer work or any of that, that's a real challenge for me.
Like the attention span aspect of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I was a chef. I worked with my hands. I was on the move. I mean, anybody that's, know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect for a guy like me because it's always different. It's always, I made a joke the other day that to a buddy of mine, he was with me last night. We went for a run, and he was at the house, and I said, I wasn't made to sit in front of a computer. I was made to hold a knife in my hand and then hold large pieces of meat in front of my crotch region and dry hump the air for comedic purposes. I mean, that's it's just a kitchen life, right?
Oh yeah,
waiting,
totally.
Right? You've seen the movie. I mean, we lived it. I don't know.
Yeah, Eric has been in the field for.
I've been in the service industry my entire adult life.
Yeah. So anyways, I've never been grounded, and it's interesting. You talk about the recovery piece we do, or this could really be anything that anybody suffers from. And it's like, I remember my first 4 months of sobriety, I used to sweat so bad that it would literally come down to my waistline from my armpit.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just everything working its way out. So, as I moved on and I got an opportunity to help other people, I was a member of, of a program for a long time after I got sober. And it takes forever to level out. So, 2011, it's 2020, so it'll be 9 years in August. And there's still things that I'm trying to, learn. Or my point is that 20 years of living one way, especially through all those developmental years, teens, early adulthood, it doesn't change overnight, right?
Right. Doesn't change over 10 years.
Does it change over 10 years, man? Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. We're on the same page.
Yeah, it gets better.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, becoming grounded. And so I started doing all these different things, right? So like trail running, I found trail running, which I'm really good at, right?
Really therapeutic, but also like real good for your body physically.
Yeah, so I actually posted one of my last posts. I just deleted my personal Instagram, and which is funny that you brought up the conversation from last week.
Yeah.
But one of my last posts was basically that, I'd put on my running shoes 2 times before yesterday. I've been on a steady diet of rock stars, Marlboros, donuts, pizza, every other kind of shit food I can cram in my mouth. And I went and laid down 6-7 miles with a buddy of mine up through Camel's Back and Hulse Gulch and Sidewinder, and people that know that area and, know the trails are going to know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
But, at a certain point that becomes a mind over matter, which our minds are stronger than any muscle that we can ever build, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But that grounds me. I started sleeping on the floor, which is interesting, being a single guy and, telling women that, after you get to a certain point, and they say, well, no, wait a second, tell me that again. And, yeah, I sleep on the floor. I sleep on the floor because it's part of grounding me. I mean, it's closer to the earth.
Right.
I mean, if you want, I can call you once a week and tell you to go to your room and unplug all your electronics, and if you want to be grounded.
Yeah. Can you do that? We'll just
no
set
problem.
up like a standing. Yeah. Let's see here. What would be a good day of the week for that? I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah,
go to your room.
Yeah. I need that tone though, right? I mean, I need the stern, talking to. So
I can use the dad voice all day.
Yeah. Good.
I got a couple of thoughts. Have you ever heard of like the copper wire setup that some people have, where they have it literally like along like a floorboard out of a window and then into the ground? It's not necessarily like a wire, but it's like really thin copper, like let's say sheeting, and it's just wound up to go outside, and then they have it like through the actual bed somehow. This is like, it doesn't make sense. I watched a YouTube video about it, and it's the same idea of grounding you, getting that energy from the earth underneath you while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember. I'll have to do a little research on that again, and I'll send you the information once I get a hold of it again. But and then shifting towards another thought.
Hey, can I just say one thing real quick? I've always wanted to do this, ever given the opportunity to be in a setting like this, where I just wanted to say, that's neat. That's good stuff. That's neat. I like that. If you catch that reference, you know what I'm talking about? It's an SNL thing,
okay.
Where they make fun of an NPR deal. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Comedy is life.
It's good
for this
times.
guy.
It's good.
It's really, really impressive. It's good.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
It's neat. I like that.
It's neat. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay,
Anyways.
so 2011
yes.
is when you first got introduced to this idea of recovery, right?
Yeah, dude. I was at the end of my rope.
Yeah.
So basically, to give you a brief story of that, I was at a substance abuse level of oxys daily use, to where when I couldn't get oxys, I would have to get Norco. Which have acetaminophen in it. Mm-hmm. So when you're taking 40 or 50 of those in a daily, dosage, fucks your liver up. And so then I would say probably, for a year prior to that, I was getting sick, didn't know why. Of course, it was never the drugs or the booze. I mean, why would it ever be that, right?
Yeah, those are the things that make you feel good. Why would they make you feel bad?
I mean, come on, And so then I remember my youngest daughter was born. My ex, her mother, a wonderful woman, at the time, we were still together, and I got so sick, and I remember just like, I thought I had liver failure, I thought I had kidney failure, I actually did. I was on the verge of cirrhosis of the liver, all that stuff.
Right.
And
that yellow look going on.
Yeah, good old yellow look. And it had gotten to the point where I could drink a beer and my ankles and feet would swell, right?
Yeah.
And then I would pass out. And so I had a conversation with my father, and he goes, I'm on the phone with him, and he says, "Well, Godson, it sounds like you're coming off of like heroin or something." And I go, "Well, yeah, that's pretty much what we're talking about, an opiate addiction, you know."
It's cleaner.
Yeah, exactly. Pharmaceutical grade dad, give me some credit.
Yeah.
And he says,